First of all, I just want to thank all of our sponsors for this conference, Wells Fargo, everyone who has been willing to put financial and kind support to it. And I want to thank the participants, and I want to thank the other Federation hosts. It's been a real privilege to collaborate with them on this conference and on other activities. And this morning, what we wanted to do is share with you a little bit about what we think is a very important trend for federations to actually be much more proactive in collaboration for fundraising and for marketing. And how do we support all of you in your workplace giving that is not just the traditional workplace giving format. And in that context, let me first of all do a little bit more of an introduction of the two people I've asked to join me today, as well as the rest of our Global Impact team. In the audience, we have our star, Erica Lopez, who has been really, really key for us for Charities at Work and for this conference. And Teresa Connor, who's based here in New York, who's another member of the leadership team for Global Impact, I think is somewhere in the audience. Maybe she's not quite arrived yet. And then here with me is Ann Canella, Vice President for Advisory Services, and Mauricio Vivero, who is the founding CEO for Seattle International Foundation, which I'll come back to, but he's also a board member for Global Impact. So starting out, I'd like to just say that, as I mentioned in my initial comment, I really do think that we are in a crossroads for especially global philanthropy. Global Impact, as many of you know, has been around for about 60 years, and our focus is on international causes and on representing so many amazing brands, Save the Children, UNICEF, World Vision, in workplace giving. But we believe that our role as a federation has to change with the crossroads of philanthropy that we see, in which many important objectives and causes around the world have made tremendous progress in our lifetime, particularly over the last decade. We've seen child mortality cut in half. We've seen polio almost eradicated. But as we look ahead, public sector funding for global causes and global health and development will no longer grow at the rates that we saw in the last decade. And so how do we begin as a sector, a nonprofit sector in international development, to partner with the private sector much more strategically? Private philanthropy for global causes now exceeds public sector funding from the United States. And so the importance of corporations, of employee giving, of individual giving becomes absolutely paramount for global giving and global development. And I think that that will be the case for domestic causes as well. So in that context, Global Impact has really looked at broadening our services to include kind of three major lines of service. One is what we would call advisory services, where we actually try to help design and support the development of signature campaigns and new initiatives that complement workplace giving. The second is what we would call campaigns that includes these kind of unique signature campaigns we're going to talk more about. And then finally, we provide kind of the support services, the back office services that many of you are more familiar with Federation support. So today I want to talk a little bit about this kind of new, more proactive approach to signature campaigns. And many of you who have participated in the panel yesterday or today will hear some of the same themes, not all of them. But essentially, what I'd like to share is a definition for signature campaigns, and then turn to my two colleagues and interview them a bit, if I can, from their perspectives. Signature campaigns, what we're seeing in the marketplace, are really where you may have your traditional campaign, you may have make sure that your employees have choice, but you as a company may have decided that you're going to focus on human trafficking, like Carlson, or on women and girls, or on disaster and resiliency, and that has become a focused area for you, or the environment, for your corporation, whether it's globally or whether it's in the United States. And you want the opportunity, you don't want to force it, but you want the opportunity for your employees, sometimes even your customers, to be able to join you in that cause. because increasingly your own corporation believes that you can change the world with that cause and change the problem into a solution. And that's what I think we hope for, particularly in global development, that corporations will continue to get in the game, because philanthropy will look very different in the next 5 years. And much of philanthropy will be the skill-based expertise the private sector can bring. It won't just be philanthropic dollars. So signature campaigns are a way for you to, without disrupting your workplace giving, is to add a focused campaign on disaster resiliency or on women and girls to your repertoire, if you will, and to be able to give employees a chance to participate with you. And so that sense of collaboration, we think, is very, very interesting and complements, if you will, choice and kind of the more traditional campaign approach. But let me turn, because I think a couple of things. One is I want to share with you a little bit about what a foundation has done to focus on collaborating and working with these signature campaigns. And Mauricio Vivero, as the founding member of Seattle International Foundation, one of the first foundations in the country to focus on international development issues solely, has really looked at how he could bring together the public and private sector in a focused signature campaign around Central America. Mauricio, tell us a little bit about what the Central America Donors Forum is and how you collaborate with the private sector.
Thanks, Scott. Good morning. Our foundation was started just a few years ago, and because of the deep commitment of our founders, we focus in an area of the world that is very poor, very close to the U.S., but often ignored by U.S. philanthropy and American corporate philanthropy. We view our mission as trying to alleviate poverty in that region, which is extreme. And our strategy for doing that is to really support the other corporations and foundations that are trying to make investments in that region. And so just let me share with you a couple of ways that we have tried to take on this role of collaboration with the goal of really making the investments of others have more impact, have more long-lasting results, and a way to give them a way to be able to report back to their stakeholders what impact can look like. So the first thing that we do is we bring all of those corporate and private philanthropic leaders together to look at the region and understand the trends and issues. The countries of Mexico and Central America are, of course, smaller markets. It's unrealistic that every corporation have an expert or CSR office in those regions. But if you're making investments in those regions, it's really important to understand what the trends are, what the governments are doing. And without that baseline knowledge, sometimes those investments don't have the impact that you need. I was recently in Michoacan, Mexico, talking to some foundations and corporations that wanted to work on education, and to their surprise, they had no idea there was a teacher's strike. So obviously context matters. The other thing we try to do is create choices for employees in companies that want to give in this part of the world. Being in Seattle, we have great partners like Microsoft and other companies who have an amazing employee base who want to donate all over the world. And we've been able to facilitate investments for some of those employees to directly fund charities in Mexico and Guatemala, something they couldn't do directly, but we were happy to support them. There are 50 million Latinos in the US. A lot of those employees want to see some of their giving go to their home countries or where they have strong cultural and family ties. So let me just end on the last third point, and then take questions. Is that what we're really focused on is trying to give these corporations and foundations a way to understand the issues, pool resources when necessary, and then be able to take that information and report back to their stakeholders how their investment not only had impact, but maybe was part of a more strategic vision We're doing a lot in Central America around opportunities for young people, whether it's education or job training. And so it's one thing to say that you've made an investment in a particular job training program for women. I think it's much stronger to report back to your stakeholders that you made the investment, which was leveraged by 5 or 6 other donors, and that was relevant to the needs of that community because you had this extra knowledge. So again, it's great to be at a conference where the theme is collaboration for impact, because that certainly is our goal. And I encourage you to think about this kind of collaboration if you work in these countries, and we'd be happy to be a resource. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Mauricio. So I've suggested to you that there is a much more proactive approach by corporations in taking on these focused areas for impact. And now you've heard one foundation at least talk a little bit about how they are keen to partner with corporations in this collaborative approach to signature campaigns. And Canela, can you share with me what it looks like, particularly as a federation, when you're supporting a signature campaign like this? What is a signature campaign, and how does Global Impact even support something like this?
Sure, I'll answer your question, but I'll tell a story first. How about that? We work really at the nexus of private sector and nonprofit, and we're working with a major hospitality company. And they had a problem, which was when disaster hit around the world, the busboys and the maids would come to the property owners with a bucket of cash. They were literally that invested in their communities worldwide that their employees that didn't have access to bank accounts, excuse me, were bringing buckets of cash. And so they had a problem. They didn't know what to do with the cash. They didn't know how it related to their strategic objectives. The property owners didn't want to take the cash from the employees. Were they going into their personal checking accounts? And that's sort of where the beginnings of a signature campaign can start. So it can even start with the heart as opposed to your head. When you're in making these kind of decisions, it's probably a little bit of both. But what the strategic objective of the organization was, it was to get the property up and running as quickly as possible if a disaster hit. So there's community preparedness, there's all of those strategic objectives that they were trying to resolve. But in the end, it was about the busboys and the maids wanting to give to the local communities. So Global Impact worked with working with this organization, and we launched a fund that was worldwide. It has a technology platform. It accepts 120 plus currencies, translatable into 70 languages. It's in 90 countries. And it accepts cash through a partnership with Western Union in about 655,000 locations. So I guess, that's sort of the big picture, but if I were to give advice on what to do with these signature campaigns and these signature funds, I would say, if you're looking at collaboration, you need to choose your partners wisely, and I think Mauricio was getting to that point. It's for us, a worldwide solution is a complicated process. So choosing partners that you can collaborate and work with is important, I think. The other thing is understanding the issue, really understanding what kind of impact you want to make with a fund, really understanding the nuances, the cultural nuances, how this works on a worldwide basis. And I think, something I always tell my daughter is, don't be afraid to fail. Go far enough to fail. So when you're doing a worldwide solution, it's challenging. There's a lot of pitfalls. Technology is involved. No offense to any technologists, but technology makes things challenging. And don't be afraid to execute and to work through the struggles and challenges of what a worldwide solution would look like.
Thank you, Anne. I'm going to open it up and see if there's a question or two from the audience. There may not be. But as a former executive from 2 large nonprofits in the international sector, World Vision and PATH, which PATH not as well known, but the largest grantee of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, one of the things that I really want this audience to know is that I really believe that the leadership and the future of philanthropy, particularly for global development, will be in the hands of the corporate sector. So although it's only 6% of all philanthropic giving right now, the leadership that you take on issues and on causes, not just globally but domestically, I think will shape philanthropy for years to come. And I think that the opportunity for your employees to be part of that will be increasingly exciting, because it gives them a chance not only to hopefully give, but also to engage with the causes that they care about and often why they've come to your company, particularly younger workers. So we look forward to being a resource for you on what's called signature campaigns, which are happening in both the public and private sector. And the panel, I think we have two amazing, in addition to Mauricio, we have Robin Boggs and we have Solois from Carlson. So, hope you'll join us there too. But I'll turn it back over to Chris, or if there's a time for a question or two, and if not, we'll be around.
So the question's for Mauricio. So how do you get corporations, TD Bank, for instance, we're a Canadian bank, Toronto Dominion Bank, we're here in the States from Maine to Florida. How do you get somebody that is not focused necessarily on Latin America to give to a foundation like yours, or give to programs in Latin America that may not be tied to their sort of footprint?
Well, I'd say there's two avenues for you. One is, do you have employees that care about that part of the world? And if so, there can be, working through Global Impact, there can be an easy solution to give them an option to make some investments in these countries, which there is some strong connection to. And then second, it's probably, if you do business in any of those countries, although it may not be a critical market for you, it could be a secondary market. There is a way to make smart philanthropic investments that will have true impact. And so I think through the collaboration, using intermediaries like us or Global Impact, you can do that in an efficient way, even though it may be a very small part of your portfolio. But if you do business in these countries, you probably want to have some philanthropic investments.
Yeah, just to follow up to that, thank you. We don't have business down there, but I guess we do have a presence in Florida and a lot of our in states where we have Hispanic employees who have family in those countries. So I'd like to talk to you further about how we can engage those employees to use your networks to give back to those countries that they care about. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.